Hello, I'm Peter Samuelson. This is number 0834, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0834. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Jonathan Handel, who is the author of the children's book, Who Do You Want to Be?
The book is about a 15-minute read, but it's about 68 pages, each occupation on a separate page. And the choice of occupations was a combination of first of all, what I thought kids would be interested in. Secondly, what my research online suggested, because I've surveyed kids, what do you want to be? Thirdly, what some of the most likely and productive occupations are likely to be in terms of surveys of what adults do and surveys of what jobs will be required in the future. I want any kid to be able to see themselves in any occupation and realize they could be, almost anything.
Retired journalist Patrick Sangimino is the author of the fictional novel Dogs Chase Cars, about the decline of the newspaper business.
It's a story that details the downturn through the eyes of a longtime sports columnist who spent 32 years on the job. And he's driving to work one day, realizing that he might be the next casualty in a mass layoff. The story takes place over a single day, but it flashes back to a career and a lifetime of memories and a lifetime of broken relationships and mistakes made along the way, and how he got here, and the people who helped him, and the people who are no longer with him.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back for the Weird Story for August. This one deals with a feud that Houdini had with someone in the afterlife.
Pretty famous medium known as Marjorie. As part of her seances, she would channel her deceased brother named Walter. As she became more popular, it was suggested by some prominent psychical researchers that she attempt to win a prize that was being offered by Scientific American magazine, which was looking for an authentic medium. And they had a panel of scientists assembled who were going to judge mediums and find out if they were authentic or not. And Houdini was on that panel. And Houdini, of course, was famous for exposing fraudulent mediums.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0834, was Peter Samuelson, a Hollywood film producer and author of Finding Happy, a user's guide to your life with lessons from mine. He's also the founder of the Starlight Children's Foundation and FirstStar.org. And he was a guest on show number 0821, and you can go back to hear his words of wisdom. Thank you very much, Peter, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Two employees at a bakery in Paterson, New Jersey, were allegedly stabbed over a years-long order mix-up.
Can I take your order?
According to authorities, the incident occurred on July 31st when a man confronted a female employee and then attacked brothers Abed and Mohammed Assad, the bakery's owners for over a decade, with a box cutter. The suspect claimed the employees had given him the wrong order, including an eggplant sandwich instead of just a simple egg sandwich 4 years earlier.
How about as long as we're being truthful here, opening up? I've been holding a grudge against you. You're right, it's no excuse. It's no excuse.
Workers offered the suspect a hot dog and $3 as compensation, but he refused. When the employees asked the man to leave, he allegedly proceeded to stab Mohammed in the chest and Abed in the hand and arm. Both victims were transported to hospital with Mohammed sustaining non-life-threatening injuries. Police are currently searching for the suspect who was captured on surveillance video fleeing the scene. Gee, all this over a wrong order for a sandwich? Just how long should someone hold a grudge?
But I told him don't take it from me, man. It don't life too short, man. You don't want to hold no grudge, man. I told him, man, you gonna let little bygones be bygones, man. Maybe 2 weeks, then probably 3.
That's good advice. U.S. chemical company Clorox says Cognizant, one of its information technology providers, is responsible for a 2023 cyber attack causing a ransomware lockout. According to the company, fixing the snafu cost Clorox $50 million. That, plus interrupted shipments of products to customers, led to $380 million in actual damages. Clorox has now sued Cognizant based on what it allegedly did to cause that breach. Hackers simply called the help desk, operated by Cognizant, and asked for system passwords. Cognizant employees repeatedly provided them without even asking the callers to identify themselves or otherwise prove that they actually worked for Clorox. Example call? I don't have a password, so I can't connect, the hacker says. The agent replies, oh, okay. So let me provide the password for you, okay? Yeah. Maxine Reynolds, a cybersecurity expert who specializes in social engineering, commented, they just tried what typically works. Well, I guess Clorox has the goods on Cognizant because, this call is being recorded for quality assurance. So, how easy was Clorox cleaned out of over $400 million?
Surprisingly easy. Clorox. Clean feels good.
Not always. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, the Brooklyn Cyclones, a minor league baseball team in New York, hosted their annual Seinfeld Night promotion with an Elaine dance contest taking center stage. The team has held these Seinfeld-themed events since 2014, and this year's festivities featured a competition to emulate the iconic dance performed by Elaine Bennis, a.k.a. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, in the Season 8 episode The Little Kicks. Major League Baseball shared a video of the event on social media showcasing dancers of all ages, many dressed in Elaine cosplay, attempting the dance described by George Costanza as a full-body dry heave set to music. Ultimately, Olivia Vessel, a New York-based actress, was named the winner of the Elaine Dance Contest.
Hi, I'm Olivia, and I just won the Elaine Dance Contest! This is so crazy! I honestly feel like I was raised by Seinfeld. I have been doing the Elaine dance as like a fun party trick my entire adult life, so I feel like in many ways my whole life led me to this moment.
In addition to the dance competition, fans attending Seinfeld Night received a limited edition The Kramer bobblehead depicting a painting of Kramer. It's good to have goals and to strive for them. And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Jonathan Handel is a lawyer who practices transactional entertainment and technology law. He's also a journalist, media commentator, and a writer. He's here because he has a new children's book out called Who Do You Want to Be? Jonathan joins us via Zoom from Los Angeles. Hi, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program. So you have this book called Who Do You Want to Be? So I've got to go back in time. Who did little Jonathan want to be?
Well, it's funny you asked that because that was the inspiration for the topic of the book. A composer and I, who were members of the Society of Composers and Lyricists, were assigned as sort of just a fun exercise to write a kid's song. And we puzzled as to what we should write about. And then we both realized that each of us had taken ping-pongy career paths, and that inspired me to suggest, who do you want to be? I started out, to answer your question, as a math and science kid. Never got an A in high school math because I only got A pluses. I was that kid. I did a year of math in a weekend. But I also got into tech and had this sort of almost Zelig-like experience of first working at a computer store, my first high school job, at a time, this was in suburban New York, at a time when there were only about 8 or 10 computer stores in the entire world. One of my summer jobs during college, a few years later became the first .com ever registered. And my first job after college was at the company that invented the internet, the ARPANET precisely, under contract to the Defense Department. So I sort of worked at the first 2 internet companies in existence. But I got involved in local politics and gay rights and democratic politics, was asked to write a law, a gay rights law, which I'd spearheaded, even though I'd never read a law. I did that and managed to get it passed. It was going to go down to defeat, and I turned the 5-4 defeat into a 6-3 victory. That led me to go to Harvard Law School. And then I was sort of sick of the weather in the Northeast, with all due respect to most of Canada. And, I know it's your weather challenged as well. And moved to LA, got bitten by the entertainment bug, became an entertainment and technology lawyer, and then accidentally became a journalist. That's a story in itself. Wrote for the Hollywood Reporter for 10 years while practicing law, and found that all that writing opened up pathways I didn't know I have. And I write in terms of creative writing, and I write poetry, scripts, occasional stories, things of that sort. So who did Little Jonathan want to be? Little Jonathan did not imagine he'd be living in the Hollywood Hills with a convertible, doing Hollywood law. That's all I can say.
In the book, Who Do You Want to Be? I mean, you're reaching out to kids to give them an idea of what their potential might be. And I find it very interesting that you're going back to basically your book is for kids aged 4 to 8. And the reason why I find that interesting is a lot of times when people ask what kids want to be, whatever their answer is, they kind of pat the child on the head. I know one of my closest friends who, when we were growing up, they would ask us what we would want to be. And I always said, from the day I was 7 years old, I want to be in radio. And he said he wanted to be a fireman. Well, I spent a career in radio, and he's a retired fireman. But most people would say, again, pat us on the head and go, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Well, the book is very encouraging, and it's the choice of occupations. They're about, the book is about a 15-minute read, but it's about 68 pages, each occupation on a separate page. And the choice of occupations was a combination of what kids first of all, what I thought kids would be interested in. Secondly, what my research online suggested, because I've surveyed kids, what do you want to be? And thirdly, what some of the most likely and productive occupations are likely to be in terms of surveys of what adults do and surveys of what jobs will be required in the future. So it really, I wanted to see, and the book is very diverse in terms of, race and gender and evident sexual orientation to the extent that's evident and that kind of thing. I want any kid to be able to see themselves in any occupation and realize they could be, almost anything.
Do you quantify the idea of letting the child be who they want as opposed to what might be needed for society in the future as far as jobs or careers are concerned?
Yes. Answering that thoroughly would require a spoiler that I prefer not to give. But let me just put it this way. The verses are things like, I could be a lawyer, but that's too boring. My mom does that, and she's always snoring. I could be a coach of football or soccer, or be a player and have my own locker. So it's, some gentle digs occasionally, but mostly very, sort of positive, but a lot of speculative. I could do this, I could do that, and I might not want to do this, I might want to do that. Then I had to choose, okay, well, how am I going to end this? The book can't go on like an encyclopedia after all. And let me just say that the ending is one that's should be very personal to every kid and should be empowering.
Excellent. Now, we've got to discuss the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that you have done 110 illustrations in Who Do You Want to Be that were generated by AI. Now, once you decided that you were going to do this, did you think that you would have any pushback?
Yeah, I figured that I would. I mean, the issue was this. It would have cost me $15,000 or more to have a human illustrator do this, and that's not money that I had available to spend on this project. This is a self-published book. It's a book that on the one hand is sort of a hobby project. On the other hand, the feedback I've gotten from parents of kids has been things like, she has a whole pile of books to choose from, and the one she always pulls out is yours. Just really very heartwarming feedback. I didn't know that a gay guy who's single and without kids could be as sensitive to a kid's mindset, and yet you are, that kind of thing. So yeah, I knew there'd be pushback with the Hollywood Reporter, and then actually more for Puck, which is a subscription newsletter. I covered for Puck the strikes in Hollywood 2 years ago, which the writers and actors, which were primarily concerning AI and the threat of job displacement. And I have a word about that in the book, in sort of a postscript in the book as well. I think that what it did cost me to do the illustrations, to put that in perspective, was 8 hours of a $20 a month subscription. In other words, half a dollar or something, 66 cents. If you sort of piecemeal it out, that's a 30,000 to 1 ratio. That tells you that when this technology is sufficiently skilled in a particular domain, whether it's illustrations, whether it's text, which the text I wrote completely myself, whether it's film, video, that it's inexorable. Okay, you're not going to, if something saves 10 or 20% of labor, you're going to have a conversation with management. You've got to preserve. But if something is 30,000 to 1 ratio, what company can say, well, we'll forego using that? The answer is that the technology has to be shaped by people who are experts in their domain. So I got great pictures out of this, but if I were an artist or an art history person, I would have gotten even better pictures. Those people are more capable of using an illustration AI, generative AI program than I am, because they have the domain knowledge. And it's got to be shaped in a way as well that's ethical. So I'm giving 10% of the net profits, such as they are, to a children's book charity, Children's Book Illustrators and Writers, 501c3 charitable organization. And I do think that even though the law does not seem to require it, certainly doesn't yet, and in the United States probably won't when it reaches the Supreme Court, that the people who create the training data, because of course the illustration program was trained on existing illustrations, those people should be compensated, I believe. And that's the only way to preserve the economics of human creativity and to use this as a tool. We've had this issue since the beginning of the industrial age. Are these plows going to put people out of work, or are they going to augment their labor? And the answer was, a bit of both. And, you go through the industrial age and then the information age, and now the post-information age, perhaps the AI age. And there are certainly great challenges.
There are some people out there listening right now who still are upset at the fact that they can't make buggy whips anymore. But that...
Well, that's an interesting example. Look at Netflix, okay? The buggy whip people, if they viewed their job as leather in transportation, could have been making fine leather seats and dashboards for cars. But they didn't. They viewed themselves as being in the buggy whip business, and they went out of business. Netflix sent DVDs using the Pony Express, using the postal mail. But they didn't make the same mistake the buggy whip people did. They said, we're in the business of entertaining people, and in particular of doing a one-to-one entertainment, not of mass entertainment, but of knowing what you particularly want, because you would fill out a queue. What do you want your next movie to be? When I return one disc, you get another disc back. And they used that information about their users and the broader conception of the business they were in to pivot from the Pony Express to streaming. And as a result, ate Hollywood's lunch. They're the most dominant company in Hollywood now.
Well, I don't want to go away from the topic at hand, and that is the fact that you have an excellent book out there that is great for kids between the ages of 4 and 8, and it's called Who Do You Want to Be? And I think that's a great thing for kids to develop very early in age. I mean, I did that. So I think it's great for kids to have goals.
Well, that is exactly it. And the book includes a parent and teacher resource page that will be of interest to older kids as well, where you can find out the prospects for different jobs in the future on government websites, US, Canada, and so forth. The book is available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle. There's a website for the book, if you to find out more, called whotobe.kids. And that's WHO, the digit 2, the letter B, .kids. And that is probably the best place to find out more about me would be jhandel, JHANDEL.com. and also jhandel.news for my very occasional Substack.
Excellent. Jonathan, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
It's a pleasure. Great questions, and I hope great answers. Thank you.
Jonathan Handel, author of Who Do You Want to Be? You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0834, and you'll find the link to Jonathan's website, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
I'm so good at sleeping, I can do it with my eyes closed.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile program.
I'm standing brazenly tall for Canada. Ron James here. Let's keep her going. Proudly stand together in the land of 2 4s and 5 O's and butter tarts and buy Canadian. Check the labels. Make sure it's made in Canada. And let's just give her. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
Here's a penny for your thoughts from the Stuff File program, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, a country that doesn't have pennies.
And still to come in the program, we will talk to the author of Dogs Chase Cars, plus Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is here for another weird story for the month, this one, of course, being August. We also have a morning shower thought, and, of course, an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff All News right here, right now. Okay, before I share this next story, I should make a full disclosure that while the Canadian rock band Nickelback seems to have a lot of haters in the music world, I don't have any animosity about them one way or the other. But this next story is not going to help. An unusual rescue operation took place in British Columbia's Boulder Fields area, where the Central Okanagan Search and Rescue Team, or COSAR, responded to a 911 call about someone making repeated cries for help. The COSAR team split into 2 groups to search the forests and local roads, but the person in distress was soon discovered to be a solo camper singing Nickelback songs loudly enough to be mistaken for a distress call. As described by COSAR's search manager, Dwayne Tresnich, he wasn't in trouble unless you count his singing. The rescue team noted that their services are always free, and the money saved could be better spent on singing lessons for the enthusiastic camper. The identity of the karaoke camper and the specific songs he was performing for the woodland creatures were not disclosed in the report. I just want to know if members of Nickelback have heard this story and if they're doing anything about it. A couple in Oklahoma City were startled by what they described as a big, fat, naked, crazy guy entering their home at around 6 p.m. on July 21st. Homeowner Blake Overstreet said the perp, Corey Cisco, was 6'2" and 400 pounds. When Overstreet and his wife pointed a gun at him, Cisco exited through the back door and skipped to the neighborhood pond where he jumped in. Said Overstreet it was very strange. He noted the pond is filled with snakes and snapping turtles. Cisco lingered in the pond for about an hour until police coaxed him out. Wow, there's a lot to snap at there. Or maybe not. Still with snakes, the South Florida Water Management District is working with the University of Florida to develop a new strategy for managing invasive pythons in the Everglades. Solar-powered toy bunnies that emit heat and are equipped with cameras are alerting staff to python activity, which sends them out to capture and euthanize the snakes. The district says it is committed to protecting this delicate ecosystem. Well, have they thought about adding a 6'2", 400-pound naked guy to the mix? And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a zoo in Denmark is seeking donations of small pets to serve as food for its predatory animals. The zoo aims to mimic the natural food chain and ensure the welfare and proper nutrition of its carnivorous residents. In a Facebook post, the zoo explained that they will accept healthy animals such as guinea pigs, rabbits, and chickens that owners need to rehome. These donated pets will be gently euthanized by trained staff before being used as fodder for the zoo's predators. The zoo emphasized that this practice allows them to maintain the animal's natural behaviors and well-being. They also indicated an interest in receiving horse donations, though they did not list any other specific pets or animals as potential donations. The online call for pet donations was accompanied by a picture of a wildcat with its mouth open, showcasing the zoo's predatory residents. You know what this leads to eventually, right? Soylent Green.
They're making our food out of people. Next thing, they'll be breeding us like cattle for food. You gotta tell them. You gotta tell them! Soylent Green is people!
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Patrick Sangimino is an award-winning journalist who has worked for more than 4 decades at newspapers in California and throughout the Midwest before retiring in 2024. He has now written a fictional account of the downturn of the newspaper industry in his book, Dogs Chase Cars. Patrick joins us via Zoom from Sunnydale, California. Hi, Patrick.
Hey there, sir. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. Right off the bat, I've got to ask about the title of the book, Why Dogs Chase Cars.
You know, everybody asks that. It's actually one of the life stories of Pat Sangimino. I was in high school and I was sweet-talking a girl, and as a result, I was late for class. And unbeknownst to me, my teacher was watching me as I was late for his class. And I walked in and he wasn't real happy with me. And I said, sorry, I was talking to someone. And he said, well, dogs chase cars, but they can't drive them. and it was one of those moments that just stuck with me. What's the dog do when he catches the car? What's the boy do when he catches the girl? What's anybody do when they reach their goal?
So how does it apply to this book that you've written? And again, you spent 40 years working. What's your thoughts on the so-called downturn of the newspaper industry as you perceive it?
I don't think there's anybody who will deny that the industry is reinventing itself right now. I mean, it's just a matter of probably months and years before we see just complete online product. And once it happens online and there's a pay window for it, you've eliminated a whole lot of your subscribers. So people will still seek out news, but nobody will come across your news haphazardly or organically, I should say. So it's kind of sad for the newspaper industry. Print is something that's always appealed to me, and it's going to be a different world.
Okay, so as I said in the introduction, your book is a fictional account of the downturn of the newspaper industry. So tell us about the plot of the book.
It's a story that details the downturn through the eyes of a longtime sports columnist who spent 32 years on the job, same job, and was beloved. And he's driving to work one day, typical Friday in November, kind of gathering his thoughts about what the weekend's going to hold, college football on Saturday and a pro game on Sunday probably. And realizing that he might be the next casualty in a mass layoff. The story takes place over a single day, but it flashes back to a career and a lifetime of memories and a lifetime of broken relationships and just mistakes made along the way, and how he got here, and the people who helped him, and the people who are no longer with him.
The people who know you, would they recognize you in the protagonist?
Oh, absolutely. And he's about probably 60% me. He's done some things I didn't do, but he's also um, a lot of the sports stories in there are true to life things that I experienced, and the names that are in there you will recognize. So it's kind of fun that way.
Because it's closely tied to your industry and to, as you say, a 60% of your life, was it cathartic in writing this book?
This is a great question. It was it was the most cathartic thing I've ever done. I wrote it. I had a health scare in late 2023, and I had 9 weeks away from work to mend, so to speak, and get back. And I decided I wanted to do something that was just, well, useful and meaningful. And I had come up with this idea about 7 or 8 years ago. And so I picked up what I had come up with 7 or 8 years ago, realized it was crap, and kind of sorted through all of that, weeded the garden, so to speak, and then just started writing. And I wrote about 2 to 3 hours a day. And at the end of 9 weeks, I had a first draft done. So it was the most cathartic thing I've ever done.
Going back to your career, there are some similarities in your story and in my story. I mean, I worked in radio and television, and I had the opportunity to interview people that are in the public eye. I'm just curious to knowing your thoughts as to when you got the opportunity to perhaps interview somebody whom you might have idolized either growing up or just as a sports fan or whatever the case may be. What was that like for you?
It was something you had to learn very quickly. As you know, you had to separate your personal feelings your from your professional feelings. And the first time that I walked into a professional sports locker room, I was my jaw was agape, I'm sure. But the more time I spent in there, the more it became kind of comfortable. Um, I was in Kansas City, grew up in San Francisco watching Joe Montana play quarterback for the 49ers. And lo and behold, Joe Montana gets traded to the to the Chiefs, the team that I'm covering. And this is a guy who I waited in line to watch play for, countless times. So all of a sudden it was bigger than it was the biggest thing I'd ever done. And that took some getting used to.
Did you eventually get used to the idea? And that one of the things I've discovered is as you get older, you talk to younger players or younger actors, and it's not quite the same because you don't revere them in the same way that you would revere someone who you grew up watching.
You're exactly right. And once they start calling you sir, once they look at you as an old man, then all of a sudden the game changes a little bit, you know?
Now, again, you've worked for many newspapers, and what's the difference in your estimation of working to deadline each and every day as opposed to writing a book? And also writing a book that is partially fiction.
Writing, everyone asks me if writing, getting able to narrate a story was fun. And it was harder in so many ways. You got to direct it to as you saw fit, but you had to figure out how to get it there too. In journalism, a story just unravels. It just the story happens, and you report both sides of it, and you let somebody decide what it all means. This one, you had complete control over it. It was so different. As for the deadlines, a little deadline each day is pretty easy compared to, and I never put a deadline on myself when I was going to be done with this thing. So once I finished the first draft, I thought I was done, which might be the most naive thought of all. That was three drafts ago. So here we are.
And if you were a young man today, would you go into the same business that you went into? Or do you feel that it's changed so much since you got into it?
There's many opportunities right now for people coming out. I don't know what young journalists are doing when they get their degrees. I know it was very competitive when I got out, and it took a while to find your place, and you paid your dues. And I found in my later years that we were hiring kids straight out of college at places that would never even be considered when I was first coming in. You go and we had to pay our dues 3 years at a weekly newspaper and then hope that a daily hired you after that. That's no longer the case.
No longer the case in my medium as well. Congratulations on the book, Dogs Chase Cars. And Patrick, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. It was most enjoyable.
I enjoyed it. I've been listening. I was doing some background work on you and listening just to make sure, see what kind of interviewer you were. And you're a very good interviewer, by the way. But I'm just very happy that I didn't make it as the idiot of the day or anything like that.
No, there's no way that was going to happen. Thank you very much, Patrick, for being on the show.
I've enjoyed it very much. You take care.
Patrick Sangimino, author of Dogs Chase Cars. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0834, and you'll find links to Patrick's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
If your comfort food is buffalo wings, then is a chicken your emotional support animal?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Hey, how would you like to become a patron of the Stuff File program? It's easy to do. By going to patreon.com and becoming a patron, you help to make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And if you become a regular patron, as a Patreon reward, I'll share with you an electronic version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. You've heard me say on many occasions about the myriad of celebrities I've had the chance to talk to that are contained in my book, which is published by Bear Manor Media. You've also heard me mention that some of the celebrities in my book, and many others, can be heard on our page at patreon.com. If you've been on the fence about joining Patreon, let me try to pull you over to our side. Join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
This is your safe haven from the hard news of the day. The Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio for your happy place.
And still to come on the program, Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, will be along to share the weird story for the month of August. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, but I've got a few more Stuff File news stories to share with you right now. right here. A man from Wyoming identified as Kevin Sinning was arrested at Buffalo Niagara International Airport after allegedly taking a motorized cart for a joyride on a moving walkway. Sinning caused damage to the cart and airport property while driving recklessly. Witnesses captured the chaotic scene on video as airport workers tried to stop him. Okay, I don't know why I mentioned that last sentence. I think it's a given in this day and age that if there is a ruckus in a public place, like an international airport, witnesses will be shooting video. Anyway, Sinning, reportedly intoxicated, quelle surprise, was apprehended by police at the end of the walkway. He faces charges of criminal mischief, grand larceny, and disorderly conduct. Incidents like this are rare due to security measures in place for airport maintenance vehicles. Authorities are investigating the situation further to determine Sinning's intentions. Wow. Taking a motorized cart for a joyride on a moving walkway. Talk about turning up the lazy scale to 11. Yeah. Indian police have apprehended a man for allegedly operating a counterfeit embassy in a rented residential building near Delhi. The suspect, identified as Hartzman Jain, posed as an ambassador and deceived individuals by promising them overseas job opportunities in exchange for money. Police discovered doctored photographs of Jain with world leaders as well as fake seals from India's foreign ministry and various other countries. Additionally, Jain is suspected of engaging in money laundering through foreign shell companies. Authorities seized 4 cars with fake diplomatic plates, along with approximately 4.5 million Indian rupees and foreign currencies from Jain's rented property near the capital. Gee, do you think he'll have the gall to claim he has diplomatic immunity? Yeah. And finally, before we get to our last guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, and still with India, a young child in India demonstrated remarkable resilience when he reportedly bit and killed a deadly cobra that had wrapped around his hand. The 1-year-old, identified as Govinda, was playing at his home in Bhatia, Bihar, when the incident occurred. According to his grandmother, when we saw the snake in the child's hand, everyone rushed towards him, but in the meantime, he already bit the snake, killing it on the spot. Govinda fainted after the encounter, prompting his family to rush him to a local hospital. Fortunately, the effects of the venom were mild, and the child's condition was stabilized under medical supervision. Okay, a word of caution here. If this kid grows up hearing everyone talk about how, as a toddler, he bit a snake to death, later in life, he might develop a God complex. And let's get to our last guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a weird story for the month of August. He joins us via Zoom from New York. And Marc, this story deals with a feud that deals with the beyond.
Yeah, this is a really interesting, weird story based on a threat that was given to Houdini by a ghost in August of 1926. So basically what happened was there was a pretty famous medium known as Marjorie, the Witch of Lime Street, a medium in Boston. As part of her seances, she would channel her deceased brother named Walter. Walter had died in 1911 from a horrible train accident, and she began doing seances in around 1924, mainly just private seances with friends and family. Her mother was her most frequent guest, and she would channel Walter, and it sounded like Walter. Her mother was believing that this was Walter coming through. As she became more popular and more well known in the Boston area. People took interest and her name got around. It was suggested by some prominent spiritualists and psychical researchers that she attempt to win a prize that was being offered by Scientific American magazine, which was looking for an authentic medium. And they had a panel of scientists assembled who were going to judge mediums and find out if they were authentic or not, deem them worthy of this prize, $2,500. And Houdini was on that panel. And Houdini, of course, was famous for exposing fraudulent mediums. He was very active in doing this aside from his busy show schedule. So because he was busy, he wasn't involved in every seance that Marjorie was doing for the rest of the panel. And she had everyone basically fooled. And she was, having Walter, his voice show up in these seances. She was making things move. She had spirit horns moving. She had bells ringing that were sealed in boxes. So she was performing all these amazing phenomena at these seances. And she had everyone convinced that she was authentic. And when Scientific American's publisher said that they were going to give her the prize, Houdini said, wait a second, not yet. You have to let me investigate her because I'm not convinced. Let me check her out personally. So Houdini went up to Boston, prepared for any tricks that she might have. He was a master of this. And he started detecting certain things, certain movements that she was making, freeing a hand that may have been able to cause some of the sensations that people were experiencing around the seance room. And so he was not convinced. There was pushback, of course, because others were. So he devised basically a box that was going to secure Marjorie. So imagine like a big wooden box that had a hole for your head to come out of, and then your arms could come out. And if I recall correctly, I think her feet were inside the box, or if anything, just a small hole for her foot to stick out. But basically, she didn't have the normal freedom of movement of her limbs like you would, if you weren't sitting in a wooden box. So when this happened, of course, initially the phenomena ceased to exist in the seances. But then they discovered that there was a carpenter ruler hidden inside this wooden crate. And Walter called Houdini out on this and was basically damning him and cursing him, saying, you'll be cursed till the day you die, this kind of thing. He was angry, thinking that Houdini was setting up Marjorie to be proven as a fraudulent medium. And of course, Houdini denied putting the ruler there. So you had this sort of face-off. Neither one was going to admit that they put the carpenter ruler there to be able to unfold and use it to make certain sounds or move certain things in the room, that kind of thing, right? That you could do theoretically with that object. So as this went on, eventually Marjorie did not win the prize. Scientific American sided with Houdini and decided, okay, fine, she's not authentic. But she continued giving seances. And so that brings us back to where we started, August 1926. During one of these seances, Walter lashed out and said Houdini will be gone by Halloween. And that turned out to be true. Houdini died on October 31st, 1926, just 2 months later.
I also believe he was punched by a McGill student from Montreal.
That's right. He was punched in the stomach because Houdini had a challenge, basically an open challenge, saying that anyone could punch him in the stomach because his abs were so strong, he was so well developed to perform his different stunts that he could take it. What happened was the student went in before a show and punched him, and Houdini wasn't quite ready for it. And he went on to perform. He felt like he felt something was wrong, but he went on to perform anyway because he had his audience and then he didn't want to let his audience down. So he did the show. And then after the show, he didn't see a doctor right away. The doctor said, you should go in right away. And then he wanted to get a second opinion from his New York doctor. He waited. And by the time he got to a hospital to be checked out, his appendix had burst and it just caused all sorts of internal issues, obviously. And he died within a few days, being October 31st. So basically that punch did a lot of damage to Houdini. Yeah. And amazingly, proved Walter's prediction or threat, if you will, to be true.
Now, I want to back up a bit. The fact that Scientific American is giving out awards for mediums, isn't there anything wrong with that?
Well, spiritualism was really popular at this time, and it had been for quite a while. And there were a lot of mediums working and a lot of scientists who were really believing them. And part of what's really interesting about this time, beyond the fact that people were truly believing that we could communicate with the dead, a lot of these mediums were women. At that time, of course, the early 1900s, there weren't the opportunities that women have today. So to be able to be a medium and to be able to be in your home as a housewife and be able to have this power and to explore new worlds and be respected by, great men of science, was really a power. I think also these scientific men didn't think that they could be fooled by this housewife, which made it easier for them to be fooled because they didn't think it was possible. And I think she was having some affairs with some of them, and I think she was able to kind of leverage, I think, a little bit of their feelings for her to be able to do certain things that might help her create certain effects, maybe release a hand at some point and not suspect anything because they were in love with her, or just one person knew one thing, another person didn't know another thing. She could kind of pull different levers to kind of create different effects as she needed to. But what's amazing is that she was able to, in many of these mediums, that the effects they could produce was really remarkable. The way they learned these things. Usually, like I said, Houdini was trying to debunk them and other magicians were doing the same. Magicians learned from other magicians. These mediums weren't learning from magicians. Somehow they were figuring these things out on their own. Again, it's remarkable what they could do and how well they could do it. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a firm believer in Marjorie. Well after Houdini said no, until his dying day, he believed that she was authentic. He proclaimed her to be authentic. And it was shortly after his death, actually, that she was, I think, objectively proven to be a fraud, and finally accepted by everybody. But she had a pretty good run as a medium.
Well, if Houdini was right, I'm sure he waited till Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was dead and got in contact with him and said, "Nya, nya, 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 nya."
Well, Houdini and Doyle were good friends.
Yes.
Yeah. And Doyle's wife was a medium. Doyle invited Houdini to a session with his wife, and she went on to give I think 15 pages of messages from Houdini's mother. And Houdini looked at it and said, "This is not my mother." First of all, she didn't speak any English. Why would this all be in English? So that really tainted their friendship, because basically Doyle's like, "Are you calling my wife a liar?" Houdini was like, "Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much." So that didn't go well for the two. So if Doyle was right, and they're off in the afterlife together, who knows what their relationship turned into.
Now, Marjorie herself, I think she died in 1941. Did she leave any heirs?
I spoke with her great-granddaughter.
Oh.
For my book Chasing Ghosts. And so I have a few great stories and quotes from her. But yeah, and she kind of talked about how it was a little bit of her relationships with some of the men who were in the seances. And also her husband, Leroy Crandon. Marjorie's real name, by the way, was Mina Crandon. Leroy Crandon was a doctor. Mina Crandon, Marjorie was on this was her second marriage. Leroy Crandon was a bit of a womanizer. And so part of this was that he was interested in spiritualism. It was a fashionable thing to be doing. Having seances was kind of a social event. And so she wanted to make sure she kept his interest. And so one theory was that, well, maybe she was learning to do this as partly to not only bring back her brother for her mother's sake, for her peace of mind and to give her some comfort, but also to keep the interest of her husband, to make sure, she wasn't divorced for a second time, which was not a good position to be in as a woman in the 1920s. These were some of the theories going on, what was going on and what led to this situation to begin with.
You had a chance, as you said, to speak to her great-granddaughter. Did you ask her if she believed her great-grandmother was a medium or just a fraud?
Yeah, my sense was that she didn't believe that this was all real.
Okay.
But how she was doing it all has never really been fully explained. It was more of like what may have been her reasons for doing some of these things. And basically, as I was saying, those reasons started pretty innocently. Like she wasn't trying to be public. She was keeping this more of like a family thing. She didn't want to go out there and make a bunch of money and take money from people. It was only when she got discovered by other sort of luminaries in Boston who were very much pushing for the spiritualism that she kind of became a public figure and had to deal with it at that point. So she kind of went into it with a bit of a different agenda, I guess you would say, than other mediums who were, cashing in on the craze, basically.
An interesting story indeed. And as you said, it's from your book, Chasing Ghosts, a tour of our fascination with spirits and the supernatural, correct?
Yeah, full of fascinating stories.
Excellent. Thank you once again for a great story for August. Looking forward to what you have in store for September.
Great. Thanks for having me again.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com and also the publisher at CuriousPublications.com. He's the author of several books. His most recent one, co-authored with Dan Meyer, is called To the Hilt, A Sword Swallower's History of Sword Swallowing. By the way, this month's story comes from one of Marc's previous books, Chasing Ghosts, a tour of our fascination with spirits and the supernatural. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is number 0834, and you'll find the link to Marc's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And now, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Once again, this is another case of people posting things on social media when they should know better. A Texas police officer is under investigation for posting on TikTok vowing to issue tickets after she failed to have sex the night before. Jennifer Escalera has come under fire over the since-deleted video that saw her writing on a notepad as she sat in her patrol car. On the post, the Harris County Constable deputy wrote in the caption, "Didn't get bleeped last night, so everyone is getting a ticket or going to jail." Apparently, there is a trend on TikTok with posters highlighting how their sex life, or lack thereof, has influenced their mood in the workplace. Escalera, whose TikTok account previously featured videos of her participating in viral trends while wearing her police uniform, is now at risk of losing her job at the Precinct 5 Constable office. Escalera blurred the portion of her uniform that stated what force she was affiliated with, but left her name tag visible, making identification easy. Now, why, oh why, would you make social media videos complete with your police name tag about giving more tickets or sending people to jail just because you didn't do the horizontal mambo the night before? One reason, and one reason only: you're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0834. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com. And once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0834. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. The Stuff File reminds you never try to drown your sorrows. They'll just learn to swim anyway.